You think power means being surrounded by people, advisors, allies, friends, smiling faces, nods of approval, hands that lift your cup when you rise. But tell me, why does it still burn when they leave? Why does the silence after applause feel heavier than any battlefield? The truth? You were never chasing power. You were chasing belonging. And belonging built on admiration will always collapse the moment admiration fades. The Stoics warned us, the nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength. Not applause. Not validation. Strength. Real strength stands in silence, not on stages. It listens more than it speaks. It chooses solitude not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. You want power? Then learn first to stand alone. Strip away the noise. Strip away the comfort. Without the claps. Without the company. Who are you, really? If that question unsettles you, good. That's where the path begins. The path of mastery. The war within the mind. At first, progress feels shared. When you take your first steps towards something greater, the world cheers for you. Everyone loves the beginning. Everyone loves the climb, until your ascent reminds them how still they've been. Then the silence comes. The cheers fade, and you realize that power was never meant to be a group activity. It's not measured by how many stand beside you, but by how many you have the courage to walk away from. The people who once celebrated you will call your growth betrayal, not because you hurt them, but because you grew without their permission. You began choosing peace over noise, purpose over comfort, and every choice refined your circle until it became a line, then a shadow, then silence. But silence isn't emptiness. It's refinement. It's alignment. Power demands boundaries. Not all at once, but brick by brick, thought by thought. Like a fortress being built around your focus. Not everyone deserves a key. Not everyone should be invited in. The ones who complained the loudest about your distance were often those who benefited most from your closeness. They weren't there for your discipline or clarity. They were there for your fire. And when you stopped burning for them, they left cold. But you didn't lose them. You filtered them. You refined yourself. This isn't rejection. It's transformation. It's not cruelty. It's clarity. Because when you carry purpose, you can't afford to carry everyone. Some people are heavy in the worst way. Not because they're bad, but because they're not built for the weight you're meant to lift. Every time you lower your standards to keep someone comfortable, you lower your altitude. You trade clarity for closeness. And closeness, when laced with noise, clouds everything you once saw so clearly. So let them call you cold. Let them say you've changed. Because you have. You've become the version of yourself that no longer needs to explain. You've learned that boundaries aren't walls and they're filters. They keep your mind clean, your mission focused, and your heart unshaken. You begin to see power for what it truly is. Not in domination, but in discipline. Not in noise, but in stillness. Not in being followed, but in walking alone without losing direction. And when the world misunderstands your silence, when they say you've grown distant or proud, what most call loneliness, the wise call alignment. In the end, the climb was never about being seen. It was about seeing clearly. The higher you go, the less you need. The less you speak, the more you understand. And the more you understand, the quieter you become. Because the greatest power, the only real power, is not commanding others. It's commanding yourself. The path of solitude doesn't end with silence. It begins there. Because silence is not peace, not at first. When the noise fades, what remains is the voice you've been avoiding. The one that whispers your fears, your regrets, your hidden desires. That voice is the first brick of your fortress, and the hardest to face. Power demands boundaries. But boundaries aren't built from stone. They are built from discipline. From the ability to say no when every part of you wants to say yes. From the courage to hold your ground when your emotions beg you to run. No man is free who is not master of himself. Freedom, then, is not the absence of restraint. It is self-command. The ability to steer your ship even when the storm rages. To rule not others but your own reactions. Most people think mastery means control. Control over outcomes, people, events. But the Stoics knew control is an illusion. You can't command the winds. You can only command your sail. That's the beginning of the fortress, learning that discipline isn't chains. It's direction. Without it, your thoughts scatter like leaves in the wind. With it, you move through chaos untouched. You start to see the world differently. Every insult becomes information. Every setback becomes training. Every temptation becomes a test of alignment. And slowly, brick by brick, you begin to build. The walls rise, and not to keep the world out, but to keep your focus in. Each wall made of habit. Each stone carved from repetition. Waking early, holding your tongue. Finishing what you start, even when no one is watching. This is the hidden labor of strength. The quiet hours no one celebrates. The world calls it isolation. The wise call it construction. You start to understand something sacred. Not everyone deserves access to your mind. Because the mind is a temple, and not every visitor enters with respect. Some come to admire the architecture. Others come to destroy it. Guard your temple. Let very few enter, and even fewer stay. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." The mind, left unguarded, becomes its own worst enemy. It creates storms that never existed. It invents enemies that never acted. It tortures you with futures that will never arrive. That is why the fortress matters. Not to block the world, but to keep your imagination from waging war against you. Every man must build his fortress differently. For some it is silence. For others it is faith, ritual, order. Whatever it is, it must hold. Because when the world begins to shake, when betrayal whispers your name, when fear claws at your chest, it is not strength that saves you. It is structure. Your fortress is not about walls. It's about awareness. It's the ability to know what deserves your energy and what doesn't. To know when to speak and when to stay silent. To know which battles are worth fighting and which are traps. This is wisdom. This is peace. This is freedom disguised as restraint. Most people will never understand it. They'll call you distant. They'll say you've changed. They'll mistake your composure for pride. You no longer bleed for things that never deserved your blood. You no longer chase validation that cost your peace. When you start guarding your energy, you begin to see the world clearly. The crowd becomes a mirror, revealing who thrives in your silence and who disappears without your attention. The ones who remain, they're the few who belong within your walls. The rest, let them drift. They were only visitors in a place that required reverence. Remember, the purpose of the fortress isn't isolation. It's preservation. It's not about becoming untouchable. It's about becoming unshakable. So that when the world pushes, you don't fall apart. When others lose their balance, you remain still. That's what Stoicism truly is. Not the absence of feeling, but the mastery of response. You still feel pain. You still feel fear, but they no longer rule you. You rule them. Every day life will test your walls. Temptation will knock. Disappointment will echo. And chaos will climb. But remember, the fortress is not built once. It is built every day, with every decision, every restraint, every breath. And if you ever doubt why you're alone, if you ever wonder why the silence feels heavy, look around you, at the walls you've built, not to trap yourself, but to free yourself. Because in a world that screams for attention, discipline is rebellion, and solitude is victory. Betrayal doesn't begin with a knife. It begins with trust, with comfort, with the soft illusion that someone truly sees you and would never harm you. The greatest pain never comes from enemies. It comes from those who once stood beside you. We grow up believing loyalty is eternal. We believe love will never shift, that friends will always remain friends. But life has its way of teaching through subtraction. It removes what is not real, gently at first, brutally later. And in that removal, you are forced to meet yourself again. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When another blames you or hates you, or people voice similar criticisms, go to their souls, penetrate inside and see what sort of people they are. You will realize there is no need to be racked with anxiety that they should hold any particular opinion about you." You see, betrayal is not the end of trust. It's the beginning of wisdom. It shows you who was loyal to your light, and who was only loyal to your warmth. And when that warmth no longer served them, they left cold and bitter. At first, it hurts like fire. You replay every moment, every word, every glance, searching for the mistake. Pain is not punishment. It's purification. You begin to understand that not all losses are tragedies. Some are corrections. Life will remove the unaligned, the ones who fed off your kindness, not your truth. And each departure, though it stings, is an act of refinement. Not cruelty, refinement. People will betray you for reasons that have nothing to do with you. Envy, fear, weakness. The Stoics warned, human nature left unexamined will always serve itself first. So do not curse the betrayer. See them clearly as they are, not as you hoped they'd be, because betrayal does not destroy you. It exposes you. It reveals what still needs to be fortified within you. It shows where your expectations were too fragile, where your trust was too eager, where your peace was too dependent on the behavior of others. In the silence after betrayal, something profound happens. You stop chasing explanations. You stop arguing with ghosts. You stop seeking closure from those who were never open to begin with. Instead, you turn inward and begin the real work, rebuilding not relationships, but integrity. Seneca said, "The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." Anticipation, awareness, clarity. That is your armor. Not suspicion, but understanding. Not bitterness, but boundaries. You begin to see betrayal not as the collapse of something sacred, but as the unveiling of what was never sacred to them in the first place. There's a moment, quiet, unannounced, where the pain stops cutting and starts teaching. You no longer ask, "Why did they do this to me?" You ask, "What did this reveal about me? What did I tolerate in the name of peace? What did I excuse in the name of love? Where did I ignore the whisper that told me the truth long before the break came?" Betrayal refines your intuition. It sharpens your discernment. It builds your walls higher, not to keep the world away, but to raise the standard for who may enter. You learn to value presence over promises, consistency over charm, depth over warmth, because words are cheap, but patterns never lie. With time, you stop reacting. You stop announcing your worth to those who cannot see it. You stop fighting for clarity in places built on confusion. You realize that peace isn't found in being understood. It's found in understanding. You forgive not because they deserve it, but because you refuse to carry them anymore. Forgiveness isn't a handshake. It's a release. It's saying, "You no longer get to live in my head." It's walking away without explanation, because silence is the only response some acts deserve. One day, you'll look back and realize their betrayal was your beginning. The moment you stopped building bridges for those who only came to burn them. The moment you stopped seeking loyalty and started embodying clarity, and that clarity will free you, not from others, but from the parts of yourself that once needed them. You cannot control who betrays you, but you can control how long you let it define you. Betrayal tests your foundation. Let it reveal where your walls were thin and rebuild them stronger, because strength is not born from what stays. It's born from what survives the leaving. Most people believe leadership begins when the world starts to listen, but real leadership begins long before that, in silence, in struggle, in the moments when no one is watching. You do not become a leader when you stand above others. You become one when you rise above yourself, when you can carry the weight of uncertainty without collapsing beneath it, when you can look at fear and say, "You can stay, but you don't command me." Marcus Aurelius was an emperor, yes, but before he ruled a nation, he ruled his own emotions. He wore what the Stoics called the inner mask, not to hide, but to protect what was sacred within. The mask was not deception. It was discipline. You see, when chaos reigns around you, the world does not need your panic, it needs your presence. Your calm becomes a signal. Your stillness becomes a command. Those who lead from emotion lose control of it. Those who lead from clarity command the storm without ever raising their voice. Carl Jung once said, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, it will tell you." And that is the essence of Stoic leadership, to know who you are before the world decides for you. The mask is not a wall. It's armor. It protects your purpose from the noise of emotion. It allows you to stay composed when others unravel. Because the truth is, leadership will demand you to stand when you want to rest, to speak when you want to scream, to remain still when everything inside you trembles. And in those moments, silence becomes strategy. Not avoidance, strategy. People will mistake your composure for arrogance. They will confuse your restraint for indifference. Let them. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be effective. When emotions drive you, logic dies. When pride drives you, wisdom fades. But when purpose drives you, everything aligns. The mask keeps your heart steady. It reminds you that not every emotion deserves expression, that not every battle deserves your sword, because sometimes silence cuts deeper than words ever could. Powerful people don't shout. They don't flail. They don't react. They breathe, they wait, and when they finally move, the world feels it. To the weak, silence feels like defeat. To the wise, it's command. The moment you stop defending yourself, you stop letting others dictate your energy. The moment you stop reacting, you begin controlling the rhythm of the room. You will be tested. People will provoke you just to see if your calm is real. They'll try to pull you into their storms. Don't go. Let them rage. Let them burn. You stay still, because storms destroy themselves. You don't have to help them. The Stoics taught that true strength isn't loud. It's deliberate, measured, and visible. You do not need to prove what is already known to yourself. You do not need to shout your truth when your life already whispers it with every action. Seneca wrote, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable. That is what the mask protects, the unconquerable within you." The greatest leaders are often lonely not because they reject others, but because few can bear the silence they require to think clearly. Few can understand that restraint is not weakness and it's maturity. That withholding emotion is not deception, it's discipline. That composure is not coldness, and it's compassion under control. You will find that the more you lead, the less you can speak freely. Because every word becomes a ripple, every reaction a lesson. And so you learn to hold yourself like a mountain, firm, grounded, unmoved by wind or praise. The mask becomes part of you, not to conceal truth, but to keep truth intact. To protect the sanctity of your focus, to ensure that no insult, no betrayal, no chaos can reach the throne within your mind. The world will try to shake you to see what remains. And if what remains is calm, you've already won. You won't need applause. You won't need validation, because mastery doesn't shout. It stands, still, present, unshaken. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. There comes a time when the journey inward becomes the only path left, not because the world has abandoned you, but because the world can no longer teach you what silence can. Solitude is not escape. It is return. Return to the only kingdom you were ever meant to rule, your own mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul, and yet most flee from that retreat. They fear the quiet because in quiet there is nowhere to hide. The noise of the world fades and the whispers of the soul grow loud. Every truth you've buried, every fear you've silenced begins to speak. But this is where mastery begins. Because the man who can sit in silence without needing distraction has already conquered the hardest battlefield of all, himself. Silence is not emptiness. It is depth. It is space when wide enough for the truth to echo. When you stop speaking, you begin to listen. And in listening, you begin to understand. You understand that peace is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of understanding. You understand that solitude is not loneliness, it is alignment. That what most call isolation, the wise call awakening. You no longer chase validation because you no longer need to be seen. You no longer crave applause because silence has become your audience. You no longer seek to be understood because clarity has replaced the need for approval. This is the reward of stillness, a calm so deep that nothing external can shake it. You don't react to every insult. You don't chase every praise. You simply remain, steady, unbothered, whole. In this stillness you meet the truest version of yourself, the one unfiltered by expectation, the one who doesn't perform, doesn't explain, doesn't hide, the one who simply is. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free, and courage is not found in the noise of war or the shouts of crowds. It's found in the man who dares to be still, who dares to listen, who dares to wait, because silence isn't passive and it's powerful. It's not withdrawal, it's command. The world moves in chaos. The wise move in rhythm. Every reaction becomes a choice. Every word becomes a weapon of precision. You realize that most of life's noise is an invitation to argue, to explain, to defend, to prove. But mastery is the refusal to attend every argument you're invited to. Mastery is restraint disguised as peace. The more you dwell in silence, the more you begin to see. You see patterns in people's behavior. You see the difference between reaction and wisdom. You see that most words are noise, and most noise is fear in disguise. So you choose differently. You choose presence over performance. Purpose over attention. You stop explaining your boundaries, you simply live them. Eventually, solitude no longer feels heavy. It feels sacred. Because solitude is where you stop performing for the world and start performing for eternity. It's where the Stoic's mind becomes a sanctuary, where the soul becomes the philosopher, where the silence becomes the teacher. You realize you never needed to be louder, you needed to be clearer. You never needed to prove your strength. You needed to know it. You never needed to conquer the world. You only needed to conquer your mind. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. Because in the end, mastery isn't about dominance. It's about discernment. It's about knowing what deserves your energy and what deserves your silence. It's about living with such inner order that the chaos of the world no longer frightens you. So when the noise of life rises again, when the world demands your reaction, remember what you've built. The fortress, the mask, the silence. Each one led you here. You do not need to be surrounded to be strong. You do not need to be seen to be certain. You do not need to speak to be understood. Because the man who has mastered silence has mastered himself. Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved and the raging of the sea falls still around it. Marcus Aurelius.